In the land of 10,000 lakes, a remarkable movement was born. Welcome to Hometown Hero Outdoors. We are dedicated to honoring our military service members, veterans, and first responders by providing them with unforgettable outdoor recreational opportunities. We believe those who have served and sacrificed so much for our country and communities deserve a chance to reclaim their spirit and find healing in the great outdoors. This is Hometown Hero Outdoors.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Hometown Hero Outdoors podcast here with Matias Ferreira. I am excited to have him today. Him and I have had a lot of back and forth regarding getting him on the podcast, and I'm honored to have you here today. And I'm just going to give everyone a little rundown of your background here. So Matias, an immigrant from Montevideo, Uruguay, moved to Atlanta, Georgia with his mom, dad, and two brothers in 1996 in pursuit of the American dream. 9/11/2001, Matias was sitting in 7th grade science class as he watched the Twin Towers collapse on TV, not realizing that his goal to become a United States Marine was going to become a reality a lot sooner than he thought. Upon graduating from Morrow Senior High School in 2007, Matias joined the United States Marine Corps as a machine gunner assigned to the 1st Battalion, 8th Marines, 2nd Marine Division, stationed at Camp Lejeune, North Carolina. During a combat tour, an Operation Enduring Freedom to the Helmand Province, Afghanistan in 2010, Matias stepped on an IED, an improvised explosive device, causing him to lose both of his legs below the knees, amongst other injuries. Matias has been awarded the Purple Heart Combat Action Ribbon, the Navy Unit Citation, amongst other military awards. During a year and a half of rehabilitation at Walter Reed Army Medical Center, Matias competed in numerous races to include the Navy 5-miler, Army 10-miler, Marine Corps Marathon, Detroit Marathon, New York City Marathon, Disney Marathon, several others, man. Matias is also part of the Wounded Warrior amputee softball team that competes all year around against the military, first responders, and celebrity teams, spreading the message that with life without limbs is limitless. Matias enjoys volunteering with numerous nonprofits, organizations that focus on rehabilitation, empowering new normals, and renewing your faith. Most of these nonprofit organizations are involved with adaptive sports, military veterans, children with physical disabilities, and law enforcement officers. Matias Ferreira is currently an active police officer with the Suffolk. Did I say that right?
Yeah, Suffolk
County Police Department in Suffolk.
Yeah, Suffolk, New York. Suffolk County, New York.
There you go. Making him the first double amputee patrolman in the country. That's amazing. Matias worked in the 1st Precinct, town of Babylon, on day tours and midnight tours on patrol for several years, and he was asked to transfer to the Community Relations Bureau to assist in bettering the relationship between communities and the police. After spending some time in that unit, Matias transferred to the Police Academy Recruit Training Section and is an instructor instructing drill and ceremonies and teaching numerous topics. Thank you, sir. Thanks for being here.
No, thanks for having me, man. I love that video you got going on. It got me all motivated.
Yeah, we got a good production crew that's done some pretty good stuff. And actually, the editor of our podcast, our production guy, Phil, he does the voiceover for that. But more about you. So Marine Corps, now, with an amputee, being a police officer, and you're very involved in the community, and you're a family man at that. So I appreciate you being on the podcast, taking time to be here and telling your story.
I appreciate you having me, man. Without the platform, you can't get the stories across. So I'm glad you're doing this.
No, it's great. And so you, straight from the get-go in your bio, you said that you migrated here, or an immigrant, and you came from Uruguay.
Yeah. My family was all born there. My mom, my dad, my two brothers, and my mom's brother lived in the United States, in Atlanta, Georgia, and they used to visit back and forth to go see her parent, her brother and their family, and just throughout the years, they were like, "Why don't you guys move here to pursue the American dream?" Now, mind you, this is before 9/11, so it was very easy to get a student visa, to get a working visa, and whatnot. So we picked up everything and just moved to the United States.
Do you remember that experience quite a bit then?
Yeah. I was pretty young. I was like 7, 8 years old. And I remember just getting on a plane for the first time, and you never experienced that. It's not like here where you pick up your kids and you go to Disney for the week, or
right.
You just travel, whatever. For us, this was like, wow, we're getting on a plane. which I don't think I've even seen a plane for the first time until I got on one. And I just remember being so excited when the plane took off, and you go back into your seat. It feels like a ride. So everything was brand new. We didn't have much growing up. So moving to the United States and having that opportunity to have our own bedroom and have our own clothes and not have to share everything was just incredible.
Oh, that's cool. No, that's a big move, especially a big decision for parents with young children. I'm sure having some family here probably helped that decision though. But even for your relatives that were here too, I mean, that's a big decision for them to make. Were they the first that had moved to the country then?
Yeah. And, my uncle had been living here since he was a teenager. And so my mom used to come up and visit with my dad. And they saw the lifestyle here. It was like, wow, you're able to walk in the street, go to school, work, and not have to worry about violence, not have to worry about getting mugged, or, your house burglarized or robbed on the street, and the kids, a lot of the youth, unfortunately, end up going into drugs and gangs and whatever else. And of course we have that here, but when it's such a smaller country and such a smaller amount of people, it's like, I don't know, it's like 1 to 3 million people in Uruguay. I mean, I live on Long Island. There's like 5 million people on Long Island just by itself.
All right.
So it's a very different perspective. But yeah, I mean, my parents to make that decision to give us a better life and give us the opportunity to live the way we live now is just something that, I look back and I thank them every day for.
No, that's an amazing story. And you don't hear that story as much as I mean, there are still a lot of immigrants and immigration that does occur here, and but it's not as frequent where you get to meet a family that, kind of started their life off here in the most recent decades anyway. No, it's pretty exciting. And then, so you got into the school system. How was that transition? Like, what did that feel like? Was that just kind of a mind-blowing thing?
They say that it's easier to learn when you're younger. So I think that looking back now, I remember going into I think the classes are called something different now, but it used to be ESOL, and used to sit in this class. They teach you how to write, to read, to speak English. And, we were going to school and pretty much learning how to do all these things. And in the midst of all this, we're also getting involved in sports, getting involved in other activities. So obviously the language barrier is a little easier to get past. And then before you know it, it's just a lifestyle, just typical kids going to school, playing sports, coming home, doing homework. And before you know it, you're 35 years old with your own kids.
No, and it goes so fast. And the kids grow up too. So the next thing you know, you'll be a grandfather. And I'm probably not that, well, hopefully a little further away from that. But
yeah. Well, my daughter's already 10 years old. So I look at some people, having children in their late teens or early 20s. And I'm like, oh my God, that's right around the corner. So it's tough to think of that.
No, I mean, I absolutely love my kids, and I'll look forward to being a grandparent someday, but dang, it's going to come too fast. That's the only thing.
That's all right. It's part of life.
It is. So now we're going to go forward to the 9/11. I mean, obviously that was a huge and tragic moment in the United States, and you obviously experienced that, and it did something, to your core as well, where were you living at the time when that happened?
So I was living in Atlanta, Georgia. I was like 7th, 8th grade. And it's funny because now I live in New York. So it's a different perspective when I speak to all my friends, my colleagues, and now some of the recruits that go through the program, they weren't even alive. So that's kind of mind blowing in itself.
No kidding.
I wanted to be in the military ever since I was a little kid. So for me, I know it's not the same anymore, but growing up, kids wanted to be cops, lawyers, firemen, fighter jet pilots, stuff like that. And now obviously people want to do different things, but I just had like a really cool experience when I was younger with a military man in uniform during the Olympics in '96. And I just couldn't get that gentleman out of my head. He's wearing his dress blues. He's all decked out in medals. And I was like, I'm going to be that one day. And after 9/11, it just seemed right that I kind of knew I wanted to go in the military, and what better reason to go than for fight for our freedom. And a lot of people, unfortunately, I take it for granted at times. You travel the world, even when it's to the most beautiful places in the world, and you realize like, wow, we really have it good here. My wife and I just came back from Greece. One of my friends got married there, and it was beautiful. But when we went into Athens, we went to Athens, Mykonos, and Santorini. The lifestyle is just different. It's a lot slower paced. Just something that I remember laughing at myself was you have to wipe your bum, and then you put the toilet paper in a little baggie and throw in the trash,
wow.
rather than throwing it in the toilet. And it's just little things like that you're like, what? You got to put the what and where? and it just makes you realize like how blessed we are to have good plumbing and water and lifestyle. I think necessities like even water bottles. It's like you can't get water like you do here. You go into a hotel and you have 2 in the fridge and whatever else there. You have to go looking for these things. So it just seemed like it was appropriate, to go fight in a war where I thought it was going to make a difference, in our country's life.
What year did you enlist then?
I went in 2008 when I did all of the MEP stuff, and I processed to go to boot camp in 2009.
And that was Camp Lejeune.
Camp Lejeune, North Carolina. I went through Paris Island for boot camp, and then I was stationed in Lejeune.
Okay, cool. Yeah, and then how did you come about picking your military career? Like, what exactly? I mean, you wanted to end up going into the infantry right away? Is that what it was?
So the funny thing is, I talk to all my Marines all the time, and we all laugh about how our ASVAB score was so low. And for the people that don't know what an ASVAB is just an exam that preps you to go into the military, and based on what you score, is kind of the opportunities you have for the workforce, right? So if you have like a 99 or 100, you can be pretty much anything you want to be in any branch of the services. If you have, I think 30 is passing. I think I scored like a 32. Not being
me
a
too, man.
person. Yeah, it's like, all right, great. I'm going infantry. So lucky for me, that's kind of what I wanted to do from the get-go. But when you sign up, typically they tell you all the jobs that you can do. And I said, hey, I want to go 0300, which in the Marine Corps is infantry. And then once you graduate boot camp, they send you to SOI, School of Infantry. And then you kind of go off your different branches of machine gunner, mortarman, assaultman, or basic rifleman. And I guess at the time there was a lot of openings for machine gunner. And I was $160, and I was 160 pounds, 6'1". They were like, "You machine gunner." I was like, "Oh my god, how am I supposed to carry this thing?" I mean, the whole machine gun, the Mod Deuce, them 250 cal is with a 30 to 45 pound tripod by itself. Then the receiver's like another 35 pounds. Then you got the barrel, which is like whatever 20. And I might be exaggerating these numbers. It's been a long time since I've carried it, but altogether, you're looking at carrying a 75 pound system when you break it down and you have to move from one place to another when you don't have vehicles. Because I was in a line platoon, which means that we were carrying all of our equipment with us. We didn't have the trucks to mount any of this stuff, and not to mention the ammo. So now you're carrying all these systems, and I'm like, dude, I'm $160, like 6'1". What am I doing? Where's the 200 plus people that can carry this stuff? And not not that many people in the military that are big boys like we are now.
Right. Yeah. And I feel you on the ASVAB. I was a tanker. Nice. So my score was like, you can drive a tank, and I was like, all right, cool,
hey, that's good enough. They're trusting.
I didn't have to carry around all that stuff though. I got to drive it.
There you go. Hey, that's a blessing in disguise, right there. Now
everyone has a very key role in what they do.
Absolutely.
So then you ended up going through that. At that point in time, were you still living in the Georgia area?
No, so I was stationed. I was active duty, so I was stationed in Lejeune, and I was living in North Carolina in Jacksonville. And after getting there, maybe like 3 months later, the guys that were serving in my unit in 1-8, they were in, I believe it was Ramadi, Iraq, and we missed that deployment fight, I don't know, a couple of weeks. So by the time they came back, we'd already gotten kind of comfortable. We're like not really doing much, maybe cleaning around the barracks and no real missions, classroom stuff or whatever. And when these guys get back, they're a little salty and they're like, where are my boots at? Where are my boots? They got you doing all the stuff. But we were told as soon as they got back, guys, you got like 9 months and then you're going to be deploying to Afghanistan. So we were like, 9 months? How the hell am I going to learn how to do my job in 9 months to get deployed into a combat war zone as a, punk ass 19-year-old,
Right. Yeah. You get thrown right into it right away.
Oh yeah.
That's crazy. So then you did your deployment, and then you ended up going to Afghanistan.
Yeah. I'm in Afghanistan, and it's crazy because I tell my friends, I'm like, man, when 9/11 happened, we were in high school, middle school going into high school, and we were wishing like we could be there to fight the bad guys and fight the Taliban and ISIS and this and that. And when I got to Afghanistan, it was September of 2010. So I remember it was like September 4th. And then all of a sudden, a couple of days passed by, and we're looking at each other. And I'm like, it's 9/11. Dude, like not even 10 years ago, we had talked about being here, and here we are, like walking. It was such a surreal feeling, to be in Afghanistan just not that much time later.
Wow. Yeah, that's kind of surreal. That's for sure. I think that well, obviously, that's a very significant time in the history of the United States, but also for a lot of our journeys, the people who did join, and I just got the opportunity to go to the where the plane crashed in Pennsylvania and Flight 97, you know, and being able to look at some of that stuff and be able to stand up the memories of the individuals who did give their lives on the things that happened in 9/11 and really looking back at our lives when 9/11 did happen and seeing where we did and what we sacrificed and what they sacrificed really brings it full circle. You know, and I imagine you being in New York now and being able to go to the 9/11 memorial is pretty moving for you.
Yeah, I went. They were doing the marathons and whatever else is. So I went back. I don't know, like 8 years ago for the first time. And when they were building the new Freedom Tower, I remember they had let a group of wounded warriors go up to one of the floors, and I remember I was just kind of like sitting there with my head down, like just praying and thinking about that day and whatever had happened. And somebody took a picture of me, with my head down, and I was wearing like a Yankees fitted hat, and I just look back and I go, what were Americans thinking that day? Like what just regular everyday people were just walking down the street, looking around, and all of a sudden, bam, planes going into towers. I can't even imagine what those people felt like, and I've heard I've met some pretty incredible people after my injury because of, the way things work and volunteer work and this and that. And you hear their stories and it's like, they didn't really sign up for that. They were just going to work. They were going to visit. They were going on a joyride. I signed up for that. I signed up to go overseas, and I kind of knew what I was signing up for. These people were just living their life, so I can't imagine just every single day you go home and you go to work. And I talk about this in my mental health podcast about autopilot, how we're on autopilot. How many people do you think were looking down at their phone or maybe reading a magazine or getting in a car or whatever and just driving, and they were like did a second look, like what was that?
Right.
So I remember getting in trouble when I was in school because I thought it was a sick joke. Not being from New York, being in Atlanta and watching these planes hit the towers, you're just like, what is that? What kind of sick joke is that? So
Right.
it's definitely surreal,
Absolutely. Yeah. And then, I mean, and you think about the culmination of everything that happened too, and then all of a sudden you're in Afghanistan and then you encounter a life altering situation yourself. Want to talk about that?
Yeah, so my whole goal in Afghanistan, as you probably know, or a lot of veterans that listen into the show, was operating enduring freedom, right? So our goal was to go there and clear the Taliban forces, win the hearts and minds of the people, and just help out. Now, for the veterans that are listening, a lot of us have kind of understood that our goal in a war zone was really just to follow instructions, follow orders, do what we're told, and it was just a job. It's like going to work. Taco Bell, it's like going to work at a school. Like, it's nothing different. Of course, we take it a little bit more personable and a little bit more prideful because we're doing a job that not many people want to go. And at that time, I don't think any of us really wanted, if we knew the severity of it and we knew what was going on, how we really wanted to go for the amount of money that we were making. A lot of people that were there because they had some kind of passion in their heart to give back to their country, not the mission, not what we were doing in Afghanistan. So my purpose was, as a machine gunner, is just to set over watch for our guys. We'd clear the streets. We would clear IEDs. We would help people. They would build schools and wells. And of course, the Taliban would come and blow everything up. So there was times where you'd be sitting there at night going, what the are we doing here? What are we doing here? What is our goal? What is our mission? What's the purpose? Like you definitely ask why a lot. Some people that go back and back and back and back, from deployment to deployment to deployment, I think it becomes more of like a lifestyle. It's kind of like your boys are out there. It's kind of what you know how to do. You're good at it. I know a lot of, at least in the Marine Corps, you got one or two shit bags here and there, but for the most part, everybody there is pretty squared away, and ready to go.
Yep.
So we were clearing this compound one day. We'd been told that Taliban were lacing IEDs in this area. And so we picked up all our stuff again on a foot patrol. We went down across a wadi of which is like an open land of water, but there's no water. It's all dried up desert. And we get to the compound. We have three elements: an entry team, an overwatch team, and a capture team. And so, of course, the guys kick down the door, clear. They're clearing the whole compound with detectors and the dog. And so I took my team, which was, a couple guys. I can't remember how many guys there was, but we were a team. And they said, the captain was like, you guys are going to go on the roof, set overwatch for the night. In the morning when they wake up and start, doing patrols. He said 10-4. We started putting the tripods up and putting the machine guns up and, guys were taking their bags off and getting a little comfortable for the night. And it's crazy because I just remember, and I've told the story a million times now, and it's like the more I tell it, the more I remember some details. But I just remember us going up into this little roof, because that's how we were going to get to see over the walls. And we all went up the same way I came down, except that when I went up, we all kind of walked up. And when I jumped off the roof, being about 160 plus, the vest, the helmet, the gun, the this, that, I must have been like, 200 pounds, let's call it. I jumped off and I landed on a 30-pound IED that was already in the ground. And the pressure plate was kind of dug in a little deeper because it rained a couple days before. So all I remember just kind of being upside down on my back and everything just ringing. I mean, the movie's got it pretty good. It's like that pin drop. The pin drop is like, pretty much my ears going off with tinnitus. And I just see these little lights flickering back and forth. And I have guys tell me like, hey, man, stay put. We're going to take care of you. And honestly, I didn't really know the extent of my injury at the time. So all you hear is the 9-line medevac being called out, Bravo Mike Foxtrot 7229er, da-da-da. And all of a sudden, within what seemed like a couple of minutes, a helicopter was coming in and they're putting me in the litter, carrying me onto the helicopter. And, the rest is history. When I got to Germany, because we go from the combat zone to Bagram, which is a local hospital. And then from there, they take you to Germany where there's a more stabilized hospital facility, good doctors, and, whatever else, a little bit more sanitary. They started doing surgery and I woke up and I remember looking down and I was like, both my legs are gone. And, I had my broken pelvis, shattered femur. It was just a lot. The bomb had really, took a hit, and especially as I was on a rooftop. Yeah. But honestly, it's crazy because looking back now, like my biggest thing has always been faith, religion. And I know we question it a lot and whatever, but I just kept looking up going like, God, if you get me out of here, like I'll do whatever it is that you want me to do. I was like, I get to go home. And that was really a pivotal point for me to go, hey, I got work to do now.
Were you fairly religious before you joined the military and everything?
I've always been, churchgoer, not like religiously going to church every single Sunday, but we did. I prayed, I read the Bible, I talked about faith, but not like I do now. I definitely was already set up for success. I believe that, Jesus was my Lord and Savior. I knew who God was, and my family always kind of talked about it. So for me, I felt like I was a little bit more prepared than most, because I think religion, unfortunately, is dying in today's society because we were forced as children to go to church. And now as adults, a lot of people kind of go, I don't have time. I don't have time. I have sports. I have this. I have that. And then we don't pick up a Bible anymore because nobody goes to the bookstore anymore. Nobody reads books. That's what it appears. Of course, I know people read books. I'm just talking about from a blanket statement back then.
Right.
But I remember that when you're deployed, you don't have much else to think about or talk about. So I used to sit on post with my buddy Kelsey, and we used to talk about the Bible. We used to talk about God and what's going to happen, God forbid. Because, you're 18, 19, 20 years old, and you're seeing your buddies die or get hurt. So all you do is you hope that it doesn't happen to you. You just pray, you're like, please, God, like, get me through this, give me the strength, whatever. I mean, I'd lost a lot of guys to, lighter IEDs, 10 pounds, 5 pounds, and losing eyes and arms and everything else. And me, I stepped on a 20-pound bomb, and all I lost is like my shins down. I know to other people who are like, only your shins down. Yeah. But to me, a guy who knows people that have lost everything up to the hips and stuff with a 10-pound bomb, like, I'm very fortunate. I'm very blessed to be alive.
Oh, well, I'm glad you're still here, man. Be able to tell and share your story. And, looking back at that day when that happened, and you're talking about the sensations, the different things you experienced, the explosion, the ringing, the lights, do you really recall feeling much else beyond that? Like, was there a shearing pain or?
It wasn't until later on where I started feeling the pain in my pelvis. Like the legs, they hurt. And, it was kind of like a pain of like, if you drop the 50-pound dumbbell on your leg, like, you have some throbbing pain. What people kind of are confused about is phantom pain and nerve damage. So the phantom pain is in the beginning, right? Where you feel like your legs are still there. So you still got an itch or you still get like a cramp or whatever. And throughout time, it's more of nerve damage, right? Where your nerves are kind of like firing off, but they don't have anything to respond. So throughout time, the more pain that I felt was in my midsection, my pelvis, and my pelvis separated. So they had to put X-Fix to put the pelvis back together because I was non-weight bearing. So I couldn't even stand up when they gave me prosthetics. I had to wait like 3-4 months for this bone to heal. And then that's when I was starting to, do physical therapy and get back into it.
So they transport you out of Iraq, and then typically they go to Germany, and then from there to Walter Reed, and I've had a handful of friends that have been in Walter Reed before, and everyone has a little bit of a different experience, so for the average listener who is, obviously does not know somebody who has been through Walter Reed, what was your experience there, and what exactly, what was their, obviously know what their purpose is to get you better, but what did that experience seem like for you, or that journey? I mean, that's a long road.
It is a long road, but I'll tell you this, and especially looking back now, I question so many things that happen in life. And the older I get, obviously they say the more wisdom you get. Looking back, I've always had a pretty positive outlook on life, and I'm optimistic about things that happen that you're just like, you want to be upset at the world and God and your family and whoever. But looking back, like I was treated like a God, I was treated like with so much respect and like, oh my God, thank you for your service and stuff. Like, look, let's be honest. I'm not trying to say that I have imposter syndrome, but you feel like, what the hell did I really do? I survived. Okay, great. You're a survivor. Let's call you that. But I'm no hero. Like, heroes are people like Kyle Carpenter that knew what the hell they were doing. They jump on top of a grenade to save people's lives. You have, Dakota Myers. These guys have these incredible stories of things that they did, that they pursued, danger for safety of others. So for me, I'm very blessed that I'm alive, and I'm very grateful that people look up to my story and whatever happened. But I know that was meant for me. What happened was meant for me, and I'm using it, for positivity for others who are going through difficult times in a physical aspect. Because there's so much more than a physical injury that goes on in military service members. There's guys who I love dearly that are, not amputees, that don't have anything physically wrong with them, but are dealing with a lot of anxiety, depression, PTSD, alcoholism. They depend on drugs. And I'm sure you've had as well, numerous suicides, overdoses. And you get one like every year or every other year or a couple a year, and you go, what the hell is going on? And for me, like, I've had the support where people see my injury, and they go, dude, thanks for your service. And like, a part of my subconscious is like almost affirming that, wow, what I did was worth it. But imagine our brothers and sisters who get deployed or do, let's say, time in service, never deployed. It still takes a toll on you, on your body, on your life, monetarily, physically, emotionally, spiritually. So I kind of struggled that for a long time in the more recent years, because my experience, again, for the physical aspect, people were there to like fix the boo-boo, right? So I have no legs. So what do? They let me heal, and they give me prosthetics. And then other people inspire me to walk, to run, and to be involved with so many different, organizations, playing softball, skydiving, teaching kids, like that gives somebody like me a purpose. But what about the people that went through what I went through, like you were saying, and maybe didn't have a physical injury and going through Walter Reed as the Wounded Warrior Battalion in the Marine Corps, and are dealing with PTSD or dealing with other these things? Listen, these injuries, physical or emotionally, are not life ending, right? Like, people with PTSD recover. Amen. People with anxiety recover. People with depression recover. People with suicidal thoughts, ideologies, who have been on the brink of jumping off the bridge recover. Those are triggering things for me. I don't know if you put something in your podcast. I tried to let people know that some of these topics can be triggering, but having intrusive thoughts is something that people don't even know until they're older. The last couple of years I got deep into it because I was like, what is going on? Why am I having such negative thoughts, or so many negative moments in my life where it's like, well, I have a child, I'm married, I have a car, I have a home, I'm grateful for all these things, but why do I feel like this deep emotion? It's because in the military we shove everything down. We shove these nasty, nobody wants to feel sad. This happens to everybody, though. This happens to regular, everyday people. It doesn't have to be just combat veterans. It doesn't have to be firemen, police officers. And that's what I kind of talk about in my podcast with mental health, is that when you have somebody going through something and you're able to see it, it's almost easier to treat. But when you have something you can't explain, it's almost impossible. And if the person doesn't share that information, it's a double whammy because they don't know how to explain it to you, or they're not willing to try to articulate what they're feeling or what they're thinking or what they're going through. And then it becomes difficult. So when you had people like that at Walter Reed were walking you through these things, I think that's kind of was my culprit of success, is that I had people to show me the way. I had people like, hey, we're going to give you prosthetics. You're going to learn to walk. Then you're going to learn to run. And then we're going to help you go up and down stairs because that's difficult. You're learning to relive your life, you know. But again, I wouldn't have been able to do the things that I did or do now if it wasn't for people who had done it before me. So honestly, I have the utmost respect for my OTs, you know, my occupational therapists, my PTs, my doctors, my nurses, the people who help me, the nonprofit organizations that are out there helping veterans like you and I kind of get back into the rhythm of things, whether it's financial help or whatever. You know, that's what we're all here doing. There's no competition. We're just all trying to get as many resources as possible for people out there who are going through it.
No, yeah, totally. And to piggyback on some of what you said, you know, just because you went through that situation doesn't mean your story's over. Doesn't mean that you can't overcome that and you cannot move forward. And you decided not to let that overcome you, and you did decide to move forward. You know, you're a veteran who's a double amputee, and now being the first double amputee police officer in the United States, that's absolutely phenomenal. And that is not an easy feat. So there's been a lot of mental challenges that have come along with that too. Do you want to talk about a little bit of those?
Absolutely. So I apologize. My little dog's barking in the background.
You're good to go.
Chloe, come here. Chloe, this is what I got to deal with. This is how I learned how to have patience. I have a 1-year-old golden retriever. I got 2 cats and a Morkie who just turned 11, and she's the psycho of the household. And she's actually helped me learn how to deal with more of my patience stuff. I'm very low on patience, as many people go through in the military. So for me, the mental aspect of it, we have so many people in boot camp and school and deployments that help us kind of go through the physical aspect of it. And at the same time, we're so naive to call it mental strength, right? Like, oh, you got yelled at and you got screamed at and you got pushed against the wall and you learn how to have discipline. But really, it was only because we were scared as hell of our platoon leaders or our superiors and, you know, following instructions and doing what we're told. If you don't listen to me, you're going to end up getting killed. And, you know, so you just kind of follow the instructions that you're being given. But then you get out of the military, and so you're so used to following a platoon leader, a platoon commander, or whatever it is that you have leading you, and then you're by yourself, you know. And these are stories that I've kind of dealt with myself, and things that I've heard from my fellow veterans and law enforcement officers and whatever else, is that when you're operating on your own and you weren't taught these things at a younger age, you're going to struggle. You're going to struggle because we get so egotistical, you know, and cynical that we think that we're above everything else. You know, we're going to combat and we've seen our buddies getting blown up and going through a lot of trauma, and we're like, that can't happen to us. And we walk around like Hercules or Superman, you know, and some of us are praying, God, please don't let that happen to me. But you're in a combat zone, so you can't blame anybody for the worst that's inevitable to come. You know, we're just very blessed that we go there, and a lot of people do come back, you know, without any physical injuries. But when you start dealing with certain things like anxiety, right, or sadness, depression, fear, whatever emotion you want to talk about, and we've never really talked about it, it's very frightful, you know, that you're going through these things and you don't want to ask for help. You don't want to reach out because you don't want to look like the crazy person. You don't want to look like, you know, you're losing your mind, or that veteran with PTSD or whatever else. PTSD stands for post-traumatic stress disorder, right? And they try to take the D out of it and make it post-traumatic stress and whatever else. But the more I go through life, I meet people who've never gone to war zones or have not responded to 911 calls, and they have things that kind of have to go through with post-traumatic stress too. You know, like you get in a car accident, all right? And if you go in this car accident, now every time you get in the car, you're kind of scared. You know, you're scared that you're going to get in a car accident again. Or if something happens with your kids, you know, you're scared that that's going to happen again. You know, so the way that we overcome these things is by doing what you and I are doing, talking about it. Hey, man, lately I haven't been able to sleep, or I've been feeling down. Like, have you ever gone through that? And then you're going to go, yeah, man, it happened to me when I was 19, or when it happened to me when I was 25, or it happened to me when I had my first kid. It came out of nowhere. This is an emotion. Look, we push away therapists, right? I started seeing a therapist, and they broke down how the mind works, how the body works, what the fight or flight really means. All right. And then I was able to understand, like, oh, is that feeling that I have in my gut? Or is that why I'm not sleeping? Or is that why I'm sweating? Or is that why my whatever's going on physiologically in my body? And the mental health stuff is scary because you think about, things happening to you and you don't want to talk about it because you don't want people to go, oh God, there's Matt, he's got anxiety. Like, and the more we're learning a lot about it because like regular people are coming out and talking about their fears, and a lot of like what kids are going through. So when these kids are going through stuff, like as an adult, I feel like I owe it to my daughter who's 10 years old and is starting to go to school and getting bullied or people are calling her names. And now she comes home and she looks in the mirror and she's like, I'm ugly. And you start like almost getting in that mindset of everything is negative, So when you're constantly focusing on the negative, unfortunately, they say that's what comes to life is the negative. But when you constantly focus on the positive, no matter how difficult things are in the moment, then you're able to kind of work towards the light, right? You're able to kind of get through that negative emotion. And how do we do that? What you're doing, what you're promoting is the whole outdoors theme, getting outdoors, walking, getting a fresh air, getting sunlight. You can find this stuff on social media everywhere. Most people are trying to promote the right thing. Am I saying that, light is going to fix your depression? No. Am I saying that going to the gym is going to fix your anxiety? No. But you becoming aware of what these things are, you're helping yourself develop better habits, which are kind of good in the moment because when they're in the military, you're exercising these things without even knowing it, right? You're working out, you're in a team group effort. You're doing the best you can with, positivity. You have this brotherhood, right? There's a lot of good things going on, but at the same time, looking back, you're developing bad things too. The alcohol, right? Alcohol is surrounding everything in law enforcement, the military, and first responders. Drugs, guys are kind of getting the drugs. Why, in my perspective, is to kind of drown a lot of those feelings, drown a lot of those emotions, and we could talk about it. That's what we say in my podcast. Talk about it. Why did you start doing drugs? Okay, started out with some marijuana. Great. Why are you doing cocaine? And why are you freaking injecting other things? And why are you doing this? And why are you drinking a freaking liter of vodka on a Tuesday night? Because a lot of people don't know how to cope with some of those nasty feelings. So the more we talk about it, the easier it gets.
Yeah, no, it's definitely something I've been in therapy too, and it's nothing to be ashamed of, and therapy is a good thing. And it helps you process those thoughts and feelings and the experiences you've had. And being able to, like you said, talk about the things is huge, and I'm glad you guys are doing a podcast too. You have a whole different world of perspective on the things you've been through and the successes and the failures. And if we don't share those, it's not going to help anyone at all. And we have to, we have to look out for our peers and our colleagues that have been through something same or similar. Nothing's going to be the same experience, but if we're not sharing that information or sharing our experiences with each other, it's definitely going to make life a lot harder. And then ultimately some of these individuals succumb to those issues. And that's when we have the suicide numbers, and those rates got to come down. And the only way we're going to do that is by sharing. We got to share.
Honestly, I struggle with that because typically what you hear is that guy was such a good dude. That guy was a family man. That guy had kids. He was married. He had a good job. He had a good career. He was always smiling, and I know it sounds stupid and call it what you want, but Robin Williams always used to say, somebody who went through depression and everything else too, you got to worry about the guys who are pretending to be happy, not sad. People don't fake sadness. They fake happiness, right? I think I got that right. And I look back, and as a kid, I never thought Robin Williams did drugs. I never thought Robin Williams was an alcoholic. I never thought of those things, but the guy was the funniest SOB that I've ever heard, and you're like, whoa, you don't think about the things that person might have gone through in their life. And there's documentaries about it, and you read books about those people, and it makes you feel like, wow, how horrible is it that when you learn a little bit about yourself and what serotonin is and what these hormones are and why people do drugs, can you imagine being the funniest guy in the room? And then when you're not in the room, you're not funny anymore, and nobody's there to laugh at your jokes, and nobody's there to, make you feel like you're on top of the world. How in the world do you get to those levels of, is it serotonin? Is that I think that's what it is, serotonin, the happy hormone. How do you meet those expectations of the drugs and the people and the crowd? This is what they say. I'm not trying to misspread information. But they said some of the people that kill themselves are the happy people in the world. Comedians, right? Robin Williams and other people. You look at people who succumb to addiction, with drugs and alcohol. It's like, why were they drinking so much? Because let's be honest, I can't remember how old you are.
I am 40.
40 years old, right? How bad is a freaking hangover now?
Oh, terrible. Absolutely terrible.
I have 3 high noons and I'm out for like 2 days.
I know, right?
When I was younger, I could have a few drinks and party till 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, get up at 6 and go to work. Now you have kids crying. You got to go to work and whatever. I don't want to drink anymore. My wife and I rarely drink. I'd much rather have like a Coca-Cola and eat a whole pie, watch a movie, fall asleep on the couch, wake up and go to the gym. And even then that's hard, So imagine having to drink yourself to sleep. Like, I don't think that's enjoyable. I think that's kind of a cry for help sometimes, not to mention it's expensive as hell and it hurts. If you're an intelligent human being, you're going to go, hey, alcohol is good to a certain extent, I guess, maybe a glass of wine or, a drink here and there is not going to kill you. But when you're having enough alcohol to put out a whole football team, I don't think that person's doing it because they enjoy drinking. Don't get me wrong. I have a few drinks and I'm a little bit more, not that I need any more comfort to be social. As you can tell, I love talking.
That's all right.
I love meeting new people, and having a few drinks does take the edge off. But people that are doing drugs and alcohol on an everyday basis, to the point where they're going to sleep from it, it's like, man, we should have done better. We should have done better to be there for them, to ask them certain questions like, hey, man, what are you thinking about? Are you scared of those thoughts? Like, are you scared of something happening to you? Like, why are you trying to drown it out? You're always listening to music very loud. You're always having to be around people. You're always, or then the people that are by themselves all the time. I'm like, hey, how you doing? Why don't you want to come out? So it's like a weird concept, but typically you can fill people out, and you go, hey, man, I want you to know that the biggest thing I've heard in the last 5 years is you are not alone. And I hate that saying because I think is misconstrued as to what you are not alone means. You're not alone doesn't mean, in my opinion, you're by yourself and nobody's here for you. You're not alone to me means, hey, I've been through that. I know somebody who's been through that, and you're going to be okay. And I know it's difficult. And I too have had those hard days. And you know who I learned from? My grandma. Like my grandpa. I've talked to older people who, when I explain these things, they start laughing. And I'm like, what the f- so funny? This is scary. Like, what I've had these thoughts, or I've done this, or I've done that. And they go, oh, like, and my grandma's, we're Spanish. So it's a Spanish thing. Ay, mijito, like, oh, son. She's like, I've been dealing with that for 86 years. And, you're like, well, why didn't nobody tell me about this?
Right.
Why didn't anybody explain to me these emotions and the things that we have as we get older? It's difficult.
Hi, this is Phil, podcast producer for the Hometown Hero Outdoors podcast. I know your time is valuable, and we thank you for listening to our podcast. Can I ask you a favor? On whatever podcast platform you are listening to us on right now, could you please give us a 5-star review? It is very helpful when growing our podcast and expanding the message of HHO. Thank you. Now, here's a word from our sponsors. Voted Best Electrician 7 times between 2016 and 2022, O'Neill Electric was established in 2016 and is located in the Stillwater, Minnesota area. They provide commercial, industrial, and residential electrical installation and maintenance services. Their team strives to be the most helpful electrical contractor you'll ever work with, from the office to the field. Licensed and bonded in both Minnesota and Wisconsin. Go to their webpage at o'neillelectricmn.com. Founded in 1922, the Minnesota Police and Peace Officers Association, MPPOA, is the largest association representing licensed peace officers in the state of Minnesota and fights to maintain the highest ethical standards in the profession. Licensed police officers with the MPPOA membership have access to the Legal Defense Fund, homeowner and auto insurance, have a voice in the Minnesota legislature, and more. Go to MPPOA.com for more information. Relentless Defender set out to design clothing apparel that police officers could wear with pride.
They sell only top-of-the-line apparel, bringing you custom soft ink designs not found anywhere else. Relentless Defender makes it a priority to give back and donates a portion of all sales to various police charities. They stock all products and ship out same day whenever possible. Visit them at relentlessdefender.com.
I agree with you about the whole "you're not alone" piece. At the surface level and what it means versus what it actually means, and I think that's a very good point, especially for the listeners who maybe not able to relate. We do have listeners of the podcast that may have not served, but though it doesn't take away from the fact that you may have gone through something in your personal life too outside of the service that says that you didn't. There's people who get PTSD that do not serve.
I preach it, dude. I preach that to everybody. I heard something incredible from my pastor. He says, comparison is the death of gratitude, right? So when you are too busy comparing your life to other people, you're constantly going to put yourself down. Like, why does my life suck so bad? Why do I have to go through this? Why me? Why? And it's like, hold on a second, dude. Well, and I talk to my cousin about this all the time. She was a big, positive light in my eyes when I started going through a lot of my mental struggles, right? She used to be like, hey, and I look at her and I go, what the hell could possibly be wrong with her? She's beautiful, intelligent, smart, has money. Like, life is good. Not a veteran, not police. And she's like, oh, every time I see dogs, I am anxious and I go into like a ball. And I go, what? And then I had to talk to my therapist and I go, is it possible that my fears and her fears or your fears are all the same on the same platform? So the things that I am scared of are equal to the things that you're scared of. So that quote comes in handy when you go, comparison is the death of gratitude. When you start comparing what you're going through and what that person's going through and you compare it, you're always going to be like, oh my God, my life is so much worse. Dude, what people are going through in their life right now, I tell them, please don't dumb it down. I tell my recruits all the time because they look at me and I love that they say this because I know it comes from a good place, but I'm like, I can't fucking complain. You have no legs. Like, so when I think about, not running, I see you running and I'm like, no, don't do that. If you have an ankle injury or if you have an knee injury, I'm very blessed. I had legs. I know how difficult that is to go through. Recovery from a knee injury or an ankle injury or a pulled muscle. Dude, I'm a human being. Like, I get it. It hurts. It sucks. And that means that that's your worst day. And that is the thing that you have to worry about and focus on and what you're going through. You're having nightmares. You're having difficulty through divorce. Look, I went through a divorce myself. My parents went through a divorce. My older brother went through a divorce. I hate that. It's not a positive thing, but I can tell you that if there's anybody listening to this right now and they're like, my life is done, I'm going through a divorce, I'm going to lose everything, I'm not going to be able to see my kids. Look, it took time. It took years before my ex-wife and I were able to be amicable and good for our daughter and mature and grow up and go, hey, us fighting over this is not going to help the situation. And our child needs to have a good, healthy relationship with us so that she can be healthy and positive herself, right? And we're trying the best that we can with what we got. But people are like, oh, I'm going through divorce. My life is ruined. And I'm like, dude, you can't do that. Look at all the people in life who have been through a divorce. And they're okay. Is it going to take time? Hell yeah. Is it going to be hurtful? Hell yeah. Are you going to be broke for a little while? Hell yeah. But there's a light at the end of the tunnel, So I would just tell the people that are listening, surround yourself with people who love you, who care for you, and who genuinely have your back, because life is tough enough as it is. And it happens to kids a lot. Kids get wrapped up in the bullying and this and that. And I'm 35 and you're 40 and we still see that shit. We still see people putting us down, people putting other people down. I won't do it. If I'm in a room with somebody talking shit about somebody else, I go, hey man, you should tell that person that to their face. And I just walk out because I don't even want to be a part of it. No, I'm not perfect. I still laugh at jokes that are probably inappropriate. And I still go, oh yeah, that guy is an asshole, but I don't put into it. Like people are dealing with shit every single day. And again, like Robin Williams said, nobody's faking sadness. So if you see somebody down, the last thing they need is you putting them down when they already have a bad circumstance to begin with.
Absolutely. And it's one of the things I tell my kids too is don't ever let anybody tell you that your feelings aren't valid. What you are experiencing and your feelings that you have are valid. What you do with your feelings and the resources that you lean on and use is the important part. Make sure that you know that they're valid and that's okay. As long as we as other people and humans have compassion and we know that they're human, and we can help validate those. But at the same time, what can we do to help those others? It's a very good message. I appreciate you sharing all that. It's obviously you've been on your own journey for quite a while when it comes to the positivity side of things, and you continue to live that, by serving as a police officer. Not your service could have been done, in that capacity with the military, but transitioning out of there, you continue to serve, and what got you into police work?
Just like any other police officer that's probably listening to this that was in the military before, is just like the same, is service. Like it's kind of what we know. I mean, some people might call it stupid, like you don't know how to do anything else. It's not that. I know I'm intelligent. I know I could do something else, but just wearing the uniform, having that pride, being able to be a part of a team, those things are important to me. They're kind of my foundation. So it's very difficult to veer off, but that's why I'm involved in so many different other things too, besides just police work. I tell people all the time, I mean, please don't only have cop friends when you're a cop.
Right.
Have people that still humble you, that bring you back down to earth, that let you enjoy things outside of the military and the police. Because let's be honest, like there's a lot of reward in doing what we do, but there's also a lot of trauma that comes with it. Secondary trauma is a real thing. And when you're going to suicides, homicides, car accidents, babies dying and suffering, and we're all EMTs in my department, so we're going to all the aided stuff too. And so you see a lot of bad stuff in life, and it almost makes you numb to these things. And eventually people are like, what the hell is wrong with you? No, what the hell is wrong with us as a society is that we're normalizing being able to be healthy and happy, without doing shit about it. No, I could tell you what my regime looks like. I have a support group. I have a therapist. I go to church. I have a podcast. I started a nonprofit organization that helps veterans and first responders get back into physical fitness. I surround myself with things that I know make me feel good. I started reading for the first time in my life, bro. I've just started finishing books that I actually do on my own. Like I started diving into mental health, how to, be positive and negative outcomes, how to sit in this uncomfortable pain. You know how many times I've yelled at recruits for 5 years, get comfortable being uncomfortable. And then it's like, I don't even know how to do that at times.
Right,
You get anxiety and you feel like that internal tremor. You feel like you wake up with that pit in your stomach. You have intrusive thoughts. You start sweating. You didn't sleep good. You're like on your phone all damn day long, swiping because you're trying to get this like serotonin fix. And you're like, what is wrong with me? There's nothing wrong with you. Your body's doing what it's supposed to do to keep you safe and keeping you from losing your damn mind. So when I started doing all these things is when I was like, hey, man, you're on the right path. Doesn't mean I'm there. I'm far from it. And I hope that I continue to do things that make me happy and keep me healthy. But there's days that I have that I'm just like, I can't do anything right today. I can't do any breathing exercises. I can't meditate enough. I can't pray enough to feel good. And I got to stop chasing that feel good feeling because that's not normal. So that's what we have to normalize. We have to normalize. We are freaking human beings. We're designed to feel sadness, happiness, fear, anything that comes with the human, conditioning. We have to normalize that. And I think that the more we do that, the better we get. That's why you keep seeing all these Instagram videos of these young, what do they call them? Influencers. These young influencers are making these cute little videos of like, they're swimming and then they're at the gym and then they're reading a book and then they're journaling. Yeah, I got that, and I hope that they genuinely went through a tough time for them to be there and they're not just blowing smoke up people's ass, like, hey, this is why I read because it calms me down. Hey, this is why I run because it takes my mind off the thoughts. Hey, this is why I meditate because it brings me closer to my feeling. Like whatever reason you're doing the things you're doing, it's kind of what heals you. It wasn't until I started, like I said, reading books, so I was like, that's odd. It's almost like I wrote this book. This complete stranger from 1958 is writing the same things that I'm thinking and feeling or going through, So that's when I started appreciating reading.
No, it's good. And you have chosen a path that does not let you hold back on these things. And, you with being the amputee and doing the marathons that I list, how many marathons have you done now?
I've never done any full running marathons. The farthest I've run is half marathons. I've done multiple marathons.
It's more than I've ran.
Well, still, like for me, it was part of the recovery process. You wouldn't catch me dead right now running a half marathon or a marathon. Back then, I was 160 pounds, and I had something to prove, that I wanted to start running and want to get back into that Marine Corps shape. Now I'm like, you know what? I'll go for a walk. How about that? That's really nice. A 1.5 mile walk with the dogs or my wife. nice, beautiful. Today was here in Long Island. It was 75 degrees, sunny. The trees are orange, yellow, red, green. I'm like,
Oh yeah.
oh, wow, this is beautiful. You know, like
Yeah.
I'd rather do that than go running. But I still run from time to time just to keep me in the shape to you know, at least show that I'm leading by example to the younger generation, you know?
Yeah, no, it's phenomenal. And I feel you. You know, this time of year is amazing. Getting out in the fall, seeing all the colors, getting that crisp, cool air going in.
Oh yeah,
Okay, it resets the soul.
100%. Absolutely.
So the police force, though, so you decided to go to the police academy. And were there any difficulties there that you went throughout that entire training?
Oh man, I got to be honest. My department, I'm not trying to blow his team up their ass or anything, but they were so supportive. You know, from the get go, I showed up with my prosthetics, and they were like, "Whoa, hey, you got a letter or something saying that you're physically fit to be a police officer?" I'm like, "Yeah, look, the VA gave me this letter saying I'm good." You know, because all of my injuries were healed except obviously the prosthetics. My legs are not going to grow back, but they knew
Right.
that the VA was going to be paying for my prosthetics, so they didn't give me any crap about that. So when I was meeting the expectations, I was running the 1.5 miles in 11 minutes. I was doing my push-ups, my sit-ups. I was doing all the role plays. I was in the classroom. I was passing my classwork stuff. They didn't really have much to say except like, "Hey, dude, we're proud of you." So I went to patrol, and that was great. I had a really good time. The only challenges were not really challenges, but just uncomfortable is getting in and out of some of our old police cars. When I started patrol, we still had the Crown Vics, and we had some of the Ford. Whatever those are called, the cars.
I know what you're talking about.
Whatever those are, the Ford
Taurus?
What is it? The
Is
Taurus.
it Taurus? Yeah.
The Ford Taurus, they're very low, and I'm 6'1", and 230 pounds, so it's kind of difficult for me to kind of like get so low, especially when I drive a pickup truck, But that was, I wouldn't call it, difficulty. It was just, a challenge that going from my pickup truck to now this car was kind of like, weird. Because I am a below the knee amputee, driving with my prosthetics is not very difficult. If you're above the knee, it can be a little bit more challenging, but I still have my knee, so I can still push, the pedals with no problem. I still run. I still jump over fences. I still would have to do foot pursuits, and whatever else. So I think the mind kind of takes over and you forget that you're even an amputee half the time, Obviously in the morning as an amputee, it's a little bit more difficult in the morning because your limbs swell up a little bit. So it takes a little longer to get inside the prosthetics. But when I'm in, I'm pretty comfortable. I have a good team of prosthetists that build all my prosthetics. And there is an article out in Fox News that when I graduated, I didn't even notice I said it. But they were like, "Hey, what happens if you break a leg?" And I go, "Well, I go in the trunk of my car, I grab a new leg, and I'm back on duty. You break your leg, you're out for like 6 months or a year."
Yeah, true.
And so it was kind of funny, trying to shed some light on the whole amputee thing. But I've been very fortunate. None of my prosthetics have ever broken down on me, or if I ever have any issues, I go to my guy and he's got me going in the same day. So yeah, I would say that if it's something that you want to pursue, obviously I know every agency is different, but I know there's 2 other amputees that I know of, at least, that are double amputees on patrol and doing their thing. And they actually they're on my amputee softball team now. It's called the USA Patriots. And we travel the country, and, a lot of the teams that we play are law enforcement officers. So they're like, "Dude, you guys are in great shape. Why don't you guys become cops?" And that's kind of a little bit of what inspired me to go into law enforcement. And then these guys ended up doing the same thing. One of them is a cop in Fort Worth, Texas, and the other one is upstate New York.
Cool.
And I've met other people through social media that go, "Hey, I'm also a single below the knee, or I'm an arm amputee, or I'm a this." And I'm like, "Dude, how freaking awesome is this?" That people are either A, going into the police department as an amputee, or B, they were injured in the line of duty on their duty as law enforcement, and they're going back to work. I was like mind blown.
That's incredible. Yeah, no, I got a lot of admiration for you and your drive. I will give you that. I know that I've had difficult days, and I'm very impressed with your drive, and it's inspirational to others. It's fantastic. And I actually was introduced to you through Aaron Slater. He's a very common name that comes out of my mouth on our podcast, getting to meet extraordinary people.
There it is. There's a Relentless Defender tattoo, man. I love that guy, Aaron.
I know, he is such a good guy. I actually had him on the podcast yesterday at the National Law Enforcement Memorial Fund, which will air later in the season. But, one of the things that we talked about was Police Week. And have you had a chance to go to Police Week?
I did. I went with Aaron and Danny, his wife and his family, and we set up the tent, and I got to experience that whole tent city and go to the memorial. And, we did a gala, or like people in Texas like to say gala. So that was pretty cool. That was a very good experience.
Yeah, no, they're stand-up people, him and his wife, and the organization, his not department, but his company as a whole, and what they do for police officers and first responders is very stand-up, and I'm very blessed to know them just because I get to meet people like you who have a very inspirational story and the things that you've done in your career. And
this one's scary. 66% of Americans would struggle to pay for a $1,000 emergency. We don't keep any money in the savings accounts, right? The scary part about that is that 8 out of 10 of us watching this right now are going to experience a $5,000 whoopsie every 10 years. Something's going to happen. Kid's going to break a leg and there's going to be out-of-pocket max medical that year, right? There's going to be a hailstorm or a fire or some kind of a natural disaster that causes us to have to write a big old check for our deductible for the roof replacement or the car, right? Something's going to happen. And I want you to think back to the last time you had a financial emergency. Was it the event that caused the stress, or was it trying to figure out how to pay for the event that caused the stress?
so what are some of the highs and lows that you've experienced throughout your police career?
Honestly,
Sounds like you're a pretty
highs are
positive guy and you find the positivity. So
No, obviously, I mean, there's a lot of highs. The highs are being out in the community, and when I was on patrol, like you're able to kind of connect with the public a little bit more with sympathy and empathy. And there have been times where I've met kids in school, especially like I'll have one of the SROs, one of the school resource officers, call me and go, "Hey, man, there's this kid with prosthetic, and I was telling her about you on patrol, and she'd love to meet you." And I'd meet like this girl that is a double amputee, and she's playing basketball, and you're almost like shedding light on each other's stories, and you're connecting with the public. I've also been able to do some pretty cool stuff, with bad circumstances. I've had moments where I arrested, let's call it a gang member or something, and then they find out who I am, and they go, "Dude, you got mad respect and stuff." And it's almost like, I just locked this guy up, and now he's saying thank you for my service. Like, that's pretty funny. But you're able to connect with the public to a different atmosphere, because they almost see you like, "Hey, man, thank you for your service." And they don't just see you as a cop. They see you as somebody who served their country, and that kind of came first. And I'm able to just talk to people, like when I go to domestics, and there's a fight between a husband and a wife, and I go, "Listen, man, I've been through here. It's tough. It's difficult. Hang on in there. Give each other a little space. Maybe pack a bag. Go spend the night somewhere. Let things cool down." So I can almost speak a little bit from experience, and that's very helpful. Some of the lows are unfortunately some of the calls that we go on. They're tough.
Mhm.
I don't think we shed enough light on the tremendous work the law enforcement officers, paramedics, EMS, firefighters, they go through every day. We go to see some of the worst calls in our lives, and then we have to come home and pretend everything's perfect with our own families. And sometimes that's not the case. I'm trying to normalize it, at least, with my guys. Like, hey, there's going to be days where it's tough, but you know what? Instead of you going home and blowing up on your family because you've had such a long day, how about we learn how to deal with our emotions? Hey, honey, I had a tough day. I'm going to go for a walk. I'm going to get a workout. When I come back, I should be reset. We'll help out. How do we talk to our significant other? How to let the other person know, like, I know you're stressed and I'm stressed too. Like, can we talk about this later? So there's things that I've had to learn, unfortunately, the hard way, because I have been through a divorce, that going out drinking with the boys till 2:00 in the morning after you had a fight with your wife and you have a newborn is not the way to do it. Like, I've also been in the culprit of screaming and yelling at the top of my lungs because I'm out of patience. Like, I'm at the wit's end. I now have to go back to work in 3 hours, and the last thing I want to do is argue about what's for dinner, or why I didn't do this, or why I'm not doing that, or why I haven't kissed you goodnight in 3 nights. Like, I'm trying to do a better job at helping guys go, hey, how about we normalize you saying to your spouse, I need a little bit of help, I need a little bit of support, instead of ignoring them and then getting upset at them when they're upset at us because they don't understand what the hell we're upset about. And this is going to be a 20-year, 25, 30-year process with your significant other, because if you don't tell them now, you're going to get to 20 years of your police career, which you also been married for 20 years, and you also had kids that are now leaving high school and going to college, and now it's you and your significant other at home, and you have no idea how to work out problems.
Right.
So I've been trying to normalize therapy. Speaking to a therapist really does help to kind of get your voice and then understand the other person, because my wife and I would get in arguments, and I'm like, you don't listen, you don't understand, you don't talk, you close off. And these are things that we need like a third party to kind of help us meditate, on the good things in your marriage, right? And things are rough right now, but they can get better if you do this, but a lot of times we're just like, well, if she doesn't want to listen, or if he doesn't want to listen, then I'm not listening, and I'm not going to. That's not a way to fix the marriage. That's another thing that I wish my parents would have kind of prepared me for a little better. My parents made it seem like their marriage was freaking a Disney movie. And I swear to God, Chris, when I got married, I thought that there would never be any problems. All the issues that I had in my marriage were like, well, we're not married. I want a ring. I want a house. I want a kid. And it's like, when you have the ring, you have the house, you have the kids, and there's more problems. So you're like, what the f-? I gave you the ring. We got married. I don't go out anymore. I don't do anything. You resenting the other person is going to make your marriage better, But then I'll just, again, I forget who wrote the book. I recommend it to the recruits a lot. 5 Languages of Love. I don't know if you ever read that book, but that it describes how we all love and receive love differently. So I was like, well, men, we have 2 love languages. Typically, they say there's 2, right? Most men have physical touch and words of affirmation. Why? Yeah. Well, sometimes it goes to childhood. My mom was very hands-on, like hugs, kisses, good night, mwah, I love you. You look handsome. I'm proud of you. I love your haircut. And then you get married, you get a haircut, and your wife doesn't say shit, or you lose 10 pounds and your wife doesn't say shit. So now you're receiving, what is it? What's the word I'm looking for? You're getting like positivity from other people, right? You're getting noticed by other friends or whatever. And you're like, damn, like Chris or John or Jessica noticed my haircut. Why the hell does my wife do it? Well, you guys have been talking for 3 months, so I'm pretty sure the last thing she wants to do is tell you look handsome after your stupid haircut. So I think that you learn about these love languages, like, quality time. Most women want quality time and acts of service. What does that mean? If your wife is anything like mine, right, she's a nurse and she works 13, 15, 16-hour days and also does have to deal with, unfortunately, death and other rough days. For her love language is for me to maybe have the house tidied up a little bit. Take the trash out to the curb, make sure the dogs are taken care of, the animals are fed, that my kid is ready to go, did homework, laundry's done. Like these roles have to be kind of, especially if both people are working, it makes it for a better function at home rather than me coming home and going, nope, I had a rough day. I'm not doing the laundry. I'm not taking shit out. So now your significant other comes home and all these things are done. And now you're wondering why you're not intimate or why she's not telling you she loves you, because she's upset and doesn't even know how to tell you because it's going to start a fight. So when I started reading that book through therapy, it was like, wow, like, all right, I can get some work done here in my partnership, Yeah. My wife now, we still argue. We still disagree on certain things, but we have come so much closer, than we were before for recognizing that, hey, we're different people. And my wife could care less if I tell her she's beautiful, or I'm sure there's somewhere in there that she wants to hear it, but she'd rather have the laundry done. And I get that. I'm like, all right, cool. Like, It's done, baby. Whatever you need,
Yeah. It's like sometimes I'm not great about buying groceries for the family, but that does go a long way, and you got to figure out what that happy medium is and actually consciously take that action, is huge. But also being self-aware, knowing those things is also significant, and that's going to be helpful. I've been divorced too, and I'm remarried, so not uncommon ground that we've both been on, but we both get that, and you learn a lot from those mistakes and the things that you did in your previous marriage, and you hope that you learn from them and can strengthen the next relationship. And but still, it's always a learning process. When you stop learning, that's when things are bad. But no, very, very, very good words of the wise for other people who are, especially people who are young law enforcement officers, or even military, just first responder careers, probably in general too, the jobs are taxing and they are difficult, and, taking some things home with you is okay, but it's what you do with it again, and I've told my wife plenty of times where I was in an incident at work and then I had to go to a birthday party for a family member, and I'm physically there, but mentally not, but understanding that and what you do with it, and communication is huge in that aspect too, being able to be open and talk about those things. And if you shut down and don't say anything, maybe there's a time and place for that, but you got to get out of that too. Because if you just stay there, it's not going to help anything.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if you can tell, I'm sure you can, but when I speak, I get very passionate about the things that I'm saying because I know that they've helped me and I know they've helped some of my friends. And, you know, it does lose its value, especially as an instructor. I see it in the recruits. When they first came in the first month, they were like, damn, that dude's badass. That now they just treat me like a regular Joe, you know, like it's like, just Matias Ferreira, you know, like, so certain words, unfortunately, do not get you going past a certain level. Like maybe you listen to this podcast and then you hear me talk on the next topic and you're like, oh, here goes Matt again, you know, and I see that from some of my colleagues and my friends. And that's why it's important to have good friends because they will humble you. You know, I don't act like I know everything. I do struggle with trying to find some kind of perfection in who I am. And it's not normal for you to try to be perfect. You know, like you said, you're constantly going to gain weight, lose weight. You're constantly going to be happy with who you are and unhappy with who you are. You're constantly going to be happy in your marriage, unhappy in your marriage. You're constantly going to be happy with your kid and unhappy with your kid. My daughter said something about like driving, you know, in 8 years. And she goes, Daddy, in 10 years, I'm going to be 20, almost 21. So maybe we can have a drink together. Just like that, casually. She goes, how old are you going to be, Dad? I'm like, I'm going to be 46 years old. Like, that's mind-blowing to think that in 10 years, I'm going to be 46 years old. Right. You know, and you think about your parents. Like my mom and my dad are both in their 60s now. But I remember being her age, thinking my dad and mom were like 30-something years old. I'm in that stage now where I'm 30-something years old, and I'm thinking about being 46 in 10 years. It's like, oh my God, you know, so I'm always going to have a purpose to be better, do better. I gained like 10 pounds in the last 2 months from traveling, like I said, to Greece. I went to a bachelor party in Nashville. My wife and her parents, we went to Vegas, you know, so it was like enjoyment. Now Thanksgiving's coming. So I'm like trying to get some of this stuff. And it's like, dude, it's okay. It's okay to gain a few pounds, but just always go back to what you know, walking, drinking plenty of water, trying to get good sleep, go into a sauna if you can, like, you know, talk to people. And honestly, I think that makes a huge difference because when people ask me, like, how the hell are you so happy? You have no legs. Like, you have so many reasons to not be happy. And I go, well, number one, I'm going to say it's God. You know, my religion thing is like, that's important to me, you know, and I don't really push it on people, but I think it's important to know, like, what my reason is for why I think my life is a little different than some people, you know? And I also tell them, I said, don't be upset or don't be ashamed that maybe you haven't had to be there. Some people have never had a reason to have God in their life. You know, some people went to church because they were told when they were younger and then they left it, you know, because they're like, well, I don't really want to go and I don't want to sit there and talk. But I go to a community church, you know, it's a non-denominational Christian church. So, you know, we believe in Jesus, we believe in God. Unlike the Catholic Church, we don't go to confessions and we don't go up to the priest to receive the Eucharist or whatever, but we still do receive the body of Christ and whatever else. But my church, my pastor is also divorced. He talks about how ashamed he was for a long time and how it took him to recover from that to become a better pastor. And when I heard those things come from him, I'm like, I can relate to this guy. I can relate to the scripture. I can relate to some of his trials, you know, and I felt like going to a Catholic church, as much as I believe in religion and I believe in the Catholic Church and Christianity and Buddhism or whatever it is you believe in, I respect it. I couldn't understand a priest. I couldn't understand that. How the hell does he know what it's like to go through issues of marriage if he's not even allowed to be married? How does he know that there's issues of this and that when he's a priest? He's got God in his pocket. And then I realized that we all have God in our pocket. We all have Jesus Christ. We have a Bible. You can go buy a Bible and start going through the Bible, and everything you're going through right now, you can highlight pretty much the whole Bible. You're going through trials about anxiety. Anxiety's in there. You're going through, like, you know, losing a loved one. It's in there. Grieving, it's in there. Everything's in there. So I'm like, it's a book that's been around for a very long time. And if it was a lie, then I'm pretty sure somebody would have been like, you know, like, people don't keep retelling lies for centuries, you know? So somebody at some point in time would have been like, hey, that Bible's lie. We're going to throw this thing out. Let's move on. You know, it showed, people talk about science and history. I mean, I just learned this as an adult. There is history. It's known as a fact. There was a man named Jesus who looked like what he looked like and was 6 foot whatever and was of the Jewish descent. And there's no question about that. What people question is, was he the Messiah? Was he the Son of God? Like, that's what people argue. But there is proof there was a man named Jesus and all these things that happened. So for me, I'm like, I get passionate. I'm like, yeah, dude, just ask people, read about it, you know? so that's what I try to do in my life. I know that I come off very positive, but I have my days where I need my group too. I need my
Mhm.
wife, I need my friends to kind of like get me out of that rut of life and whatever else. And as long as I remember that, then I think it really does help me to stay grounded.
No, I love it. No, it's been absolutely awesome podcast, and it's good to have the energy and the inspiration and be able to share your story and your journey. And I hope it inspires others. And from being immigrating to the United States, joining the Marine Corps, going through the things you've been through. I mean, you're a true American, my friend, and I really appreciate you.
I really appreciate you too, man. And thank you for what you've done, and thank you for your service. And thanks for the platform, man. Because if it wasn't for you, I wouldn't be able to share my story. If it wasn't for people like you, other veterans, and people like us would not have that outlet. So what you're doing is important. Again, I'm not trying to put or promote myself out there, but if you want to listen to the podcast, we have a podcast,
Please
Another
do.
Cop's Mentality. Another Cop's Mentality is another guy who was in the Air Force. He's a first sergeant. He actually just got out. Another cop's a police officer in a university police. And we're all three married. All three of us have kids. We all graduated the police academy together. And we really just talk about some of our struggles that we went through, just like you and I are doing. So a lot of people really hate podcasts or hated podcasts because they're boring at times. It's kind of, if you're not going through things that we're talking about right now, you have no reason to be listening to podcasts. But this
Right.
podcast is going to be up, you and I talking for hopefully a very long time on Spotify, iTunes, wherever they can listen. And whenever they need it and they look up anxiety, they look up outdoors, they look up whatever, this is going to be here for them, And I realize
Right.
that that's important, that our message might not be important right now. And it might not be important to somebody tomorrow or the next day or next week or next month or next year. I'm listening to Joe Rogan's episodes from like 3 years ago, just right now,
Right.
So sometimes it's just being patient and knowing that the message that you're putting out there might not be important to somebody right now, but I'm hoping that somebody listens to this and goes, I have a little faith. I gained a little bit of hope knowing that there's two guys right there that went through divorce, that were in the military, that went through their trials. And I'm sure that when I start listening to your podcast, you have your story out there of some of the things you've been through.
Oh yeah. No, it's out there. There's always more to come too, because life never stops and it's okay to share it.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So say again one more time what your podcast is.
Another Cop's Mentality. It's on Spotify, Apple Music, iHeartRadio. It's everywhere. It's new. We just started it like a couple months ago. So there's only like 12 episodes, but right now we're bringing on first responders, military, their spouses. And we're also getting a lot of people saying, hey, love your podcast, but not enough females are putting their perspective. We'd love to hear that. I'm like, hell yeah, I would love to hear more females. But unfortunately, every person that I reach out to is like, I don't really want to talk. I don't want to do this. So then what we did was like kind of forced our wives to come on and talk. So the first one was Angel's wife, and she talked about their struggles, like raising 3 children, and one of them's in college now, and another one's going through this. Then we brought my buddy Brian's wife, Kara, who talked about postpartum depression and some of the things that she went through with him going into the police department, and how it was impacting their marriage and how they kind of gotten better at it. And I have a lot of other women right now. I'm just trying to work out schedules where they want to share their experience from a world of a paramedic or a police officer or some things that they struggle with. I have one of my good friends. She just got done battling cancer, as she was graduating the academy, lost all her hair. And how did she deal with that? So, these stories are really important. Number one, because they're therapeutic to the person telling them, but they're very helpful and a source of, inspiration for the people that are going through the same thing, now, or have gone through that, or can, listen to somebody like that talk in the future tense.
Oh, I love it. No, it's awesome. So yeah, check out his podcast. If anyone wants to get a hold of you or talk about things in the future with you, how can they do that?
Yeah, so they can reach out through the podcast Instagram. It's Another Cop's Mentality. And my personal Instagram is public. I try to post stuff out there that, involves my everyday life. I don't really take just the good pictures. I take some of my bad days too. Hey, I had a bad leg day, or I dealt with, this, or I try to post stories of, inspiration and things that I see on social media that are positive, because it's easy to see negative stuff on social media, and for a long time I got off of it. I just kept deleting the app and getting back on it because it is an addiction. But I'm like, man, there's so much positive stuff out there, and I'm the one who's in charge of what I see. So I tried to stop watching all the negative stuff and start looking at people's stories that are, going through things, and makes us better human beings. So My personal Instagram is just Indeed USMC. So I'm sure you could probably tag it somewhere, but
Yep,
you know, if they
we'll
need to
put it
reach
up there.
out, they could just send us a message or, you know, whatever. And I'm sure at some point I'll post something too with our interaction with your podcast.
Awesome. No, yeah. Thank you for being here. Thanks for taking time out of your day. I know we have busy lives, and I really do appreciate you taking the time to speak with us. And hopefully the listeners can go and follow your podcast as well. And we look forward to speaking with you more in the future. And hopefully we can do some follow-up podcasts in the future.
Dude, thanks a lot, man. I really appreciate it. God bless you. And I hope that this helps your organization as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So for our listeners, again, this is Matias Ferreira. He's a U.S. Marine Corps. Sorry, I almost messed that up.
All good.
A veteran that was blown up while he was in Afghanistan as a police officer out in the New York area, and very inspirational story. But you know, as you can hear from him, that he has a journey that he's been through, and he's figured out what works for him. And also, we're all human and have days that don't always work out the way that we want to. So, but just want to tell our listeners too, at the end of your podcast, we do talk about the fact that, you know, not all of us are going to have positive days. And if you're feeling that you're down, there are many different avenues of resources out there to get your mental health assistance. With our field staff here at Hometown Hero Outdoors, we are trained in applied suicide intervention skills training, which is also known as ASSIST. You can reach out to any of us on any of our platforms when it comes to either being on our website or social media. Reach out to us if you're having a dark day. We'll help you get through it. We are not mental health professionals, but we are a peer support group that will help you. However, we do have resources available to you, or you can reach out to 988, which is a text message and or a phone call for the crisis line. But for that, thank you again, Matias, for being here. And for our listeners, we will see you again next time on the Hometown Hero Outdoors podcast. Thank you.
The Hometown Hero Outdoors podcast is sponsored by O'Neill Electric, the Minnesota Police and Peace Officers Association, and Relentless Defender Apparel. Thank you for listening to the Hometown Hero Outdoors podcast. For more information, visit our website at hometownherooutdoors.org.